Coming up on today's show.
But they find themselves still being very reactive instead of being proactive.
I think a typical thing that you hear from people is, oh, I'm swamped. I'm so busy, right?
So you say, okay, I'm going to answer email. Okay, and you spend 45 minutes answering email.
The next level of time management. Today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Today we are going to take you to the next level of time management. We're going to assume that you've gotten some time management techniques in, but maybe you're a little challenged and you'd like to learn a little bit more on how to do it. So we are bringing in Amy Tokus from Freshly Organized. Amy, welcome today.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Well, great. Time management is one of those things that I think everybody struggles with. Some people handle it a little bit better than others because they know techniques. But let's start off kind of talking maybe from your experience working with clients, people who maybe think they have a time management system, but it's just the very bare bones. What does that look like, for a typical person?
Okay. So a lot of times when I work with people, they do have a calendar and they have some sort of system for tracking appointments, but they find themselves still being very reactive instead of being proactive. So these tasks are coming up all the time and they're scrambling and they're trying to, they still feel like they're a little bit out of control, even though they're using a calendar. So they might have their 3 appointments that they have during the day. And then the rest of the time is just putting out fires or, they're just running around. There's no strategy to it at all. So to move to the next level would be actually scheduling your task in your day and being more proactive than reactive, because then you feel like you're getting the things done that you're supposed to be getting done. And then, going from there.
Well, I think a typical thing that you hear from people is, oh, I'm swamped. I'm so busy, right?
Right.
What does that usually indicate?
There's a couple of things it could indicate. Number one, they don't delegate. So they're micromanaging a lot of tasks that they could be delegating. It could mean that they're not very good at setting boundaries. So they're not shutting off distractions so they can focus and spend time. It could be the kind of work environment where it's just really a lot of scrambling and it's the whole culture as a whole, and kind of looking at that and seeing if there's some adjustments that you can make so that everybody isn't scrambling and feeling like that.
Right. All right. Well, let's start with kind of how we go from maybe that model there of someone who thinks they have some time management, in place. They may or may not. They have a calendar, maybe some task lists, some things like that. How do we move someone to the next level?
The very first thing is really identifying what's going on. So we got to figure out how are we spending our time? Let's really look at the calendar. Is it reflecting what we're doing and what kind of task we're taking care of? Or is it just a reflection of our meetings? But figuring out how we spend time would be using a time journal. And I don't know, have you ever done a food journal?
Actually, I've done a thing called a time log, which I think is basically the same thing. You kind of... and it's like keeping track of how many calories you eat. You say, okay, right. and sometimes it can be really just, while you're doing it, you're saying, oh my, I spent 3 minutes doing that, and then I did another 2 minutes doing that. What is going on with me? And sometimes it's hard to keep the journal too, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, it is so tedious, and doing it is probably the biggest challenge. But if you can do it for 2 weeks, and 2 weeks is ideal. Now, if you can do it for 2 days, that gives you a little bit of insight also. But if you can do it for 2 weeks, just write down everything you do. So you say, okay, I'm going to answer email. Okay. And you spend 45 minutes answering email. Well, that's great. You put email down on your log, but let's do a little bit more detail. Did you did someone send you an email that said, check out this website? And so then you ended up going to a website and doing some research on a website and then coming back and replying to the email. So let's include in that time, it wasn't just email. You went off and you did something different, but then you came back. You were addressing the email, but you weren't actually answering email during that time. So that specifically at the end of 2 weeks that email was this portion, there was some research that was this portion, instead of clumping it all together and saying, email's my problem.
And do you think
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And do you think what you should do is cover everything from, the minute you get up to the minute you go to sleep? So incorporate your personal things in with your, business things and look at a whole picture? Or are you just saying just kind of for work, or what do you think?
I think in these days, our work and personal lives overlap so much because we all have so much flexibility. And along with that flexibility at our workplace, it also work sometimes carries over into our evenings. So yes, I say do it all. And the other thing is there's different days in your personal life that are going to affect things. I had a lady one time who was doing her time journal, and she was looking at her drive, and she was like, I can't remember exactly what it was. This was a few years ago, but she had this Monday through Wednesday drive that she had to do. And there were 3 days that took her longer. It took her 5 minutes longer to get to work on general. And then she was very specific in her time journal. She did a great job. She was a model student. Yeah. And then these other days, it was a little shorter. So she was trying to figure out, well, what's going on with these days? And because she's like, I'm getting here early these days. And so looking at it and trying to figure out what was going on in the environment that was affecting her drive. And she figured out she worked near a college campus, and the classes started different times. And so that was affecting her traffic on these certain days. So it's just stuff like that can overlap into everything things you can't control, but you can account for.
Yeah. Reminds me of, I live in the suburbs of the Twin Cities. And if you don't get on the on-ramp to go into the city by 6:45 a.m., it can take you an extra half hour to go the same. So you might as well and you can wait like an extra 45 minutes, get on, and only get there 10 minutes later. So yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, that's really interesting though. She wouldn't have recognized that though without doing that time journal. Exactly.
She was just chalking it up to that's the traffic of the day, and so it didn't show up as a pattern. And so when it shows up as a pattern, then you can address it and say, okay, something might be going on here that this is a pattern.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to find out what we do after that 2 weeks, after we have put the time journal together, and how we can use that to change our life or change our time management. Okay. So we are talking with Amy Tokus from Freshly Organized, talking about time management, taking it to the next level, and we'll be right back. Now there's a place just for you. Life can be busy, and you still have to keep it all together. That's why you like to be organized and in control. Introducing MyOrganized.life, a special place where you can get ideas and solutions to organize what's important to you, your important papers, your important decisions, your important life events. We show you the ideas and products to stay organized in your life. See what's new. Stop by and say hello. Visit us at any time at www.myorganized.life. It's just for you. MyOrganized.life by Smead. Find us at www.myorganized.life. MyOrganized.life. We are back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about time management, how to take it to the next level. Maybe you think you have a time management system in place, and that's great, but let's get it even more more to the next level, I guess. And we're with Amy Tokus, Freshly Organized, talking before the break about the first step and just, analyzing how we use our time, using that time journal. And Amy, so let's say we've successfully used the time journal for a couple weeks. Now what do we do with all that information?
Okay, so this is the time when you really start looking at it and you start figuring out what's going on. You look for patterns, you look for time wasters. You start to see the things that, oh, I was on social media for 2 hours yesterday afternoon. I was only going in to post one post. And, so you start noticing your distractions and where your time's getting away. You start noticing that you schedule an hour for a meeting, but it took you 45 minutes instead of the hour. So, on a regular basis, it's a weekly meeting. You're scheduling an hour. It's only taking 45 minutes. These are some things that you can start to notice and start adjusting your schedule for that.
Yeah. It's interesting. At a previous job I had, I did this exercise, and what I noticed was about 10 o'clock every day, a guy would stop into my office and, say, hey, you got a couple minutes. And whenever anyone says, do you have a couple minutes, it means do you have 15 or 20? But right. So, I notated that, and I realized after I looked at it that he was trying to, he started work later, so he came in later, like 9:30. He wanted to always just kind of check in with me because he felt that was important for him. And then, but it would always like interrupt something I was doing. So what I did after I looked at it, I said, he is doing this every day. I think what I should just do is schedule a daily update because he kind of needs that in his position and make it work where I want to make it work. So that's another example of how that worked.
Yeah, that is a perfect example of how that works. The other thing about having a time journal is once you start seeing the patterns, and then you can start estimating. So you can start saying, okay, now I know instead of me estimating that this meeting takes an hour, I know it takes 45 minutes. Okay, so we're going to start putting it in there. But then we can start estimating smaller tasks possibly and seeing, is it matching up? So we have a better perception of time. Because a perfect example is yesterday, I had a whole list of tasks I needed to do. And there's one task I don't like to do. And I always put this big amount of time by it because I know I just went through my day and I'm like, how much can I get done today? So I'm going to estimate all these things. And this one thing, I put 30 minutes by it. And I'm like, I know it's going to take me 30 minutes. Well, sure enough, I timed myself. I estimated first, I timed myself, and it took me 10 minutes. And I was like, okay, that is a real shift for my perception of this task, because now I know that doing this only takes me 10 minutes. So I can fit in something in 10 minutes. Yeah. And it's totally helpful. So that was me, and I was overestimating that task because I didn't like to do it. And I do that with a lot of things I don't like to do. I overestimate them. Well, but a lot of us also underestimate. So if it's something we love to do, so, we love to go and chat with our coworker, right? And just a quick 5-minute chat. And we realize, okay, I'm going to go do it. It's only going to be 5 minutes. And then you come back to your desk a half an hour later and you're like, oh my gosh, I just spent a half an hour doing that. Right. And then that pushes everything back in the day. So, estimating and doing your time journal, those are two tools that can really give you a better perception of where your time's going and how you're perceiving these tasks.
Now, do you ever take and categorize what's on that time journal and say, okay, so maybe you have I don't know, maybe emails or whatever, and look at, based on my goals or whatever I really want to accomplish, or maybe my job description, I know like here, my job description says you should spend 30% of your time doing this. And do you ever kind of go and reconcile? I mean, do you really want to be spending 40% of your time doing emails, and how do you deal with that? And how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of times we have people who when I work with them, they realize that they're on their email, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of every hour. And then because it just sucks you in,
Yes.
it just pulls you in, but you're supposed to be focusing on different things. And so the email may qualify as some of the areas of work you're working on. But one of the things I love to do is create a time map. So once
Okay.
you identify where all of your time is going, then let's group these like things together so we can concentrate your focus. A perfect example is I worked with someone who was in an accounting firm, and he was a manager, and he worked with a whole team. And what he found was he had different areas of responsibility. He had, marketing, some training, and then he had his accounting work, and he might have had one other area. I can't remember exactly everything. But what we did is, as a team, because he had some people who worked for him, we decided for his schedule, it would work really good if he set aside certain times to work on marketing, certain times to work on training. And so he communicated that with his team. And he said, every Tuesday morning, I'm doing marketing. So if you have anything you need me to look at, talk about, we need to make some decisions on, get it to me before Tuesday morning. I have this set of time, this 9 to noon set aside just for marketing. And so it enabled him to focus on the marketing. And instead of feeling like he was picking up pieces of it all week, it just concentrated it. He could get some stuff done, decisions made, and then work on the projects, and then close it. And then he could focus on other things the rest of the week.
And don't you think this is kind of goes to some of David Allen's stuff, that if you have a good system set up so that everything's accounted for, you can focus on one thing? Because I know I'll find myself, I know I need to work on this. I don't really want to work on it, but it's scheduled for right now. Oh, hey, there's a mess on my desk. I better clean that first before I do this. And anything I can do to distract. How do you recommend dealing with that kind of syndrome?
Yes, you're right. We have to remove the distractions. So if you are constantly do other things, basically, because that's what you like to do, then doing things like your office and going to a conference room so that you're away from the distractions. Shutting off your email, closing your computer screen if you can, or at least closing your email program, making sure your phone is on silent. And I would even go as far as turning it upside down and pushing it away from you, because a lot of people will put it on silent, but they still have it sitting right beside them. So it lights up when a phone call comes through or a text. And so they're still looking, and they're gauging whether they should take it.
Yeah. Well, Amy, I think we're just getting into this area of distractions and maybe some of the techniques that we can use, but we're kind of out of time for this episode. Can you come back next time and we can get more into some of the distractions, some of the techniques on how to put this into action to go to the next level?
Yes, I would love to.
Okay. All right, folks. There's your cliffhanger right there. You need to stay tuned. But next time we come back with our next episode, we will get more into taking your time management to the next level with Amy Tokos from Freshly Organized. Join us then, and we'll be back then, I promise you.